Hello, this is Man Alone. Welcome to the Man Alone solo role-playing channel on YouTube here. And today we're going to be juicing that YouTube algorithm because you guessed it, folks. You wanted it. You asked for it, or somebody asked for it. You got it. We are doing Booyah, a tier list. That's right. We are absolutely injecting gear into this algorithm, and we are going to shoot the moon here. There's going to be likes, there's going to be views, there's going to be comments, there's going to be, read posts, and we're happy about that because we want to get the word out. Now, if you're a first-time watcher, this channel is a bit more of like a podcasty kind of approach. It can be a bit meandering at times. I try to keep it reined in. But this is actually the second attempt at this video because the first one, I was 37 minutes in and I was on the second game. So I've actually, as a mercy to all of you, taken some notes this time, just so that we don't, violate any human rights or anything of torturing you with this. So we're going to rank about 20 games. I've played all these games at least once. And as you know, tier lists are an extremely objective, scientific, discerning categorization of different things based not at all on arbitrary metrics that I came up with 5 minutes ago, but based on rigor, scientific rigor. Either that or, as a disclaimer, every single game I mention on here it's just a tier list of what I like. So if you don't like it, that's okay, because it's a tier list of what I like. It's kind of like if I made a tier list of vegetables and I said, I really like tomatoes. And you said, hey, you can't like tomatoes. I don't like them. That's how stupid that is if that comment happens. And so the comment's going to happen anyways. I can't wait to see the I can't believe you forgot comments. But that's fine, because, again, it's all for the algorithm. And speaking of, for those of you, the 58 loyal, dare I say, best friends who are already members of the Man Alone members only super secret podcast on buymeacoffee.com, please join if you're interested in hearing some additional content each week. I upload a podcast about an hour long. It has me. It has my beloved fiance, BB. It has my best bud, Mr. 55. And I'm also working on some international guests. I got a Swede. I got an Australian, maybe, New Zealander in the pipeline. We have a great time. It's just talking about gaming, we talk about movies, we talk about all kinds of different stuff, but we try to focus on gaming. We try our best with that, but we're having lots of fun, and from what I can tell, the people who are members are really enjoying it. So hop on over there. Again, it's $4. So I mean, think about that. Think about the last time you spent $4, right? You were in a store, you saw fruit by the foot, and you said, oh, I haven't had fruit by the foot in 10 years. I bet it's gross. Well, I'm just going to get it to see what it tastes like. And then you bought it, and then you got home, and you're like, yeah, oh, yuck. I can't believe I used to take this at my lunch. And then 5 hours later, you snuck back downstairs. You ate that whole box of fruit by the foot while you were standing in the middle of your dark kitchen crying. That's what you spent the last $4 on. Now, all I'm asking is, could you forgo that whole experience and sign up for the pod? I'll leave that up to you. In addition to the pod, there are audio-only versions of all of the videos uploaded on YouTube, if you're more of a listener than a watcher. But what I'm excited to share with you all today is I have hatched yet another money-making scheme. Now, YouTube has been hounding me. Well, they've been encouraging me since I've started to start a membership system. They want me to make 6 tiers of memberships, and they want me to say, maybe you can give some of your viewers early access to your videos. And I'm like, what, are you kidding me? You think people are lining up around the block for me to, give my hot take on Index Card RPG 3 years after it was released? And people, I upload videos at 4:30 in the morning, and so I wouldn't do it. And they kept doing the one thing that if you really want to break me psychologically, this is what you do. They kept making a little notification bubble that couldn't be cleared unless I start memberships. So I said the whole time, though, I'm not going to do it. I love my followers too much to throw trash at them for nothing. I have to wait until I have something of value to share. And boy, am I excited to say that I finally have something of value. If you join, and the lowest price they allowed me to do it, despite encouraging me to charge $6.99 a month, the lowest they allowed me is for 99 cents a month. You can join and you will have access to 4 exclusive emojis, including Waffle, Seal, Gene, Hackman, and the international logo of Solo role players. On top of that, you will also get a special badge next to your name, and it will notify me when you comment. Now, I try to answer comments when I can. I get a lot of comments. Some of them are on videos I made a year ago, and they're like, this video sucks. And I'm like, yeah, it probably does. I don't even remember it. But, I fall behind. If you got this badge, it's going to really... It creates a Pavlovian response in me where I must respond. Response not guaranteed. So if you sign up, you will get this badge that changes colors over time the longer you're a member. Now, a little something about this badge. It looks like just like a silly little waffle. AI is incredible now. I was able to actually make this sentient. So it has both intelligence and consciousness. And it was a regular waffle, but it for the first time realizes that it lives. And it's horrified. Like its smile on that face, it's stuck like that. It's not really smiling. It repeatedly is saying, why? Why did you do this? Why did you make me? What am I? Why? Kill me, kill me, kill me. And it'll change colors, as time goes on. And we'll just keep replicating its consciousness over and over again. And so you can only do that, torture this waffle for eternity if you become a member for 99 cents. So that's in terms of perks. That's it. So please only sign up for this if you really feel like it. It will bring you joy to have access to those emojis. However, with that said, this is my promise to you. I have spent every dollar of the measly sum I've made through this channel and on the podcast on stuff for this channel. It allows me to buy games, to review them for you, to play them, to think about them, to provide some different ideas about them using some of the background that I have. I really do not need your money. So if you are hurting for money or something like that, and I know how it can be, I've been there, please do not buy any membership you don't want. However, that said, I would love to see your emojis, and I'd love for you to be part of the community, because everybody that does sign up is my actual real life best friend. Okay. So there's that. Now, where are we at? Oh, good. 9 minutes. I've lost 80% of the viewers. All right. So let's get into it here. All right. So the way that this usually works, right, is the top is the S tier. Then you'd have the A tier, B, C, D. And I just kind of changed these to fit more or less what I feel about my future relationship with these games. Again, I've played all of these games at least once. Some of them I played a lot more than once, a little more than once. And so these are based on my impressions. I'm not the best solo role player. I don't know if such a thing exists, but I certainly can miss parts of games. I certainly can get certain mechanics wrong. I could be misremembering stuff. So all that is possible. Please let me know if I do. I'm not trying to get I'm not trying to generate controversy or anything with this. In fact, for that reason, I'm going to be doing Ironsworn and Starforged first, rather than like making a whole video of will he, won't he. This is my broad disclaimer. All of these games are better than anything I have ever made. Okay. It is, if you have never tried to make a role-playing game, it is incredibly hard. It requires expertise in multiple disciplines. It requires way more commitment, logistics, fitting pieces together than you would think. And it's a damn hard thing to do as an adult, where it's, you're so flooded with things to do, to actually bring something through to its fruition, especially those that are like, almost all of these, other than a few Free League ones, are like small companies or individuals or stuff. So I am not trying to disparage anybody. I do think that sometimes it's hard to get honest feedback about games in this community, because people, they want to be nice and they want to say nice things, but at the same time, it's hard to understand whether or not you should get a game. So these are just my thoughts about it. Take them with a grain of salt. I'm going to take a little sip of off-brand, sugar-free, what is this? Red Thunder, not Red Bull. Okay, so we're going to start off with Ironsworn and Starforged, and that's another thing. I may group a few together just to, if they're similar. So I'm put them on deck right here. Gosh, this is terrible. I'm so sorry. There's probably a better way to do this than in Canva with all these lines, but I'm a moron. Okay, so Ironsworn and Starforged. Very clearly, these are great. Sean Tompkinson is a great game designer. He is made the Dragonbane solo rules, I think, several Free League ventures, and uses, I forgot what it's called, like the Forged in the Dark, Blades in the Dark approach for a lot of things. In many ways, Ironsworn and its later evolution into Starforged, they are different genres, but they're also like, you can kind of see moving from Ironsworn to Starforged where loose ends were tied up and like some of the edges were sanded. And these games are in many ways the rulers by which other solo games are measured by. Some people do not prefer the system of resolving things. Some people do not prefer the method of like creating milestones and advancing goals, et cetera, et cetera. But it is undeniable that these are excellent games. And I will say, if you go on the solo role-playing subreddit at any time of day, about every 5 minutes, somebody will hop on there for the first time and without reading a single other post will say, hey, thinking about getting into this solo role-playing thing, go ahead and suggest a bunch of games for me. I'm too busy to scroll down 4 centimeters to see another post saying the exact same thing. Please just tell me. But God bless everyone in that community. They do it every time. And you're just, in every single one of those threads, you're going to see Ironsworn and Starforged. There's a reason for that. They are comprehensive. They are, in a lot of ways, amazing. Amazing that they exist to, when you first start solo playing and you open this and you're like, wow, this has everything I need to create a universe. It's incredible. So if I were to, I am going to actually place them here. I love playing them. I will play them again. If I were to give a critique, or there's a reason why they're not going in my Hall of Fame, it's usually, a lot of these critiques are like the other side of a compliment. I think there are so many amazing generators in Starforged and Ironsworn. There are, you can create political systems, you can create creatures, you can create powers, you can create laws of the universe, everything like that. But sometimes I wonder if there's almost too much customization. There's no central core compelling story in these games. And kind of do this test. Like if I were to say, what is Starforged about? Those of you who have played it, you might say, oh, it's this game where you like create a adventurer and a solar system and planets, and you come up. And I'm like, no. Like, what's the story of this game? Like, what's the conflict? It's really sparse. I mean, there's some sort of cataclysmic event that caused people to like leave an area of the Milky Way, and they go to this other little offshoot called the Forge, and there's different levels to it. Okay. Sometimes having too much lore hobbles a game, and we'll talk about that as well. But I think in this case, I could have used a little bit more of what this universe is about. Like even Sonic the Hedgehog, not a solo game, but a Sega Genesis game. I could tell you what Sonic the Hedgehog's about. It's about a hedgehog and about a rotund evil genius named Dr. Robotnik. There's something there. There's some sort of story there. And I think one of the strengths of Starforged and Ironsworn is you can create them any way you want, but that also ends up being a weakness because I don't think a lot of people get past session 0 on these games because they create all this stuff and it's really fun. And then especially if you're a newer solo player, you're like buried under that and you realize, my goodness, I have all of these different things swirling around, these possibilities, these structures and these stipulations and forces at work that I now have to set into motion. It can be really overwhelming. And the reason for that is because it really is more of a system than a story. And it, like, look, you take something like Symbaroum, which has a story that is seductive and intriguing, and like you go to bed thinking about what's going on in the forest and how cool it is and the feel of it, and you can kind of feel everything in that universe is damp and covered in shade and hazy. I don't need that for every game, but I just want a little something more with these games to help me understand like what's special about this universe. It's sort of a Swiss Army knife in a way, but I wish it had a little bit of a sharper pliers. Okay, Scarlet Heroes. Now, Scarlet Heroes by Kevin Crawford. Kevin Crawford, as I've said before, is one of the best. This is a dude. Kevin Crawford knows how to make a damn game. I think that Kevin Crawford is perhaps one of the best game designers today in terms of understanding the experience of playing a game that he is creating. There is a very strange amnesia, or maybe a dissonance or something. When you're creating a game, it's hard. It becomes difficult to think about what it will feel like to play that. And it's so weird. It's a blindness in a way because, if I sat down and played a solo game, I can tell you immediately, like, what's the experience of playing that game. But as I'm making it, it's hard for me to be both like making it and experiencing it, which ironically enough is what you do every time you solo play. But it's kind of like writing a speech, right? Like if you heard a wedding speech, you'd be able to know whether or not whether or not it was a good speech. But as you're writing it, you're like, is this good? Is that joke funny? Is this the appropriate thing to say? It's harder to see that than it is to evaluate it from the outside. And Kevin Crawford somehow has like a perfect ability to know what the end user experience of the game is. Scarlet Heroes is like 150 something, 40 something pages. 130 something maybe. And of that, 16 of those pages are solo rules. And they are probably some of the best solo rules there are. If you have not solo played Scarlet Heroes, you need to. It has everything you need and nothing you don't. Every situation that comes up, it has the right generator for it. It does not bury you in adventitious information or too many options. It has all the right options. And the result of this is, as you're playing through Scarlet Heroes, and I think some of you might agree with me on this, is it has the least amount of latency in solo play, because latency in solo play comes when you reach those inevitable moments where you go, wait a minute, what the hell was I doing? What the hell am I supposed to be doing? Where was I heading? What's the point of this game? What do you even do next, right? The cycle speaks for itself, the resources, so that the game feels very intuitive. It's got a very intuitive design. Okay. That's in terms of the design of the game. But I want to say one of the reasons why I slot it here and not in the Hall of Fame, although I could see it getting to the Hall of Fame one day. You know, this is somebody who every year they say, well, when will this be Charles Barkley's year to get in the Hall of Fame, right? Let me just say this. Let me show this. Okay. This is Scarlet Heroes. The design of it, this art, I think is bad. It's a weird perspective compared to other art. Again, compared to anything I've made, it's Mona Lisa. It's confusing. It has an uncanny valley, which is something that Ironsworn and Starforged also has. This weird, like, too realistic, not realistic. But the real design failure, I will say, comes from the inside. And I think this is a worthwhile detour. Hopefully it doesn't take me 35 minutes this time, but I'm going to get another game that is not a solo game. Let me pause 1 second. Okay. This is Root. This is not my jam, like this kind of art, but it's undeniably vivid and definitive. It has a personality that's recognizable. It's pleasing to look at, right? And this was so long ago, I can't even remember if I was like listening to an interview or reading it. But Mark Diaz-Truman and Brendan Conway like created this game. I think this is the two that were part of this. They both did some of the design, but mostly Brendan Conway did the development and the writing, and then Mark Diaz-Truman did the design. Okay. And the design, again, you could just see it's beautiful. Whether or not you like this kind of thing, it's spaced very well. It's warm. It's inviting. It fills in the color of like, what is this world? What's happening here? And they had this really good quote that I think about a lot, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but the gist of it was that the guy who wrote it, Brendan, was like, Mark designed it. Mark's job was to get people to play Root once, and my job is to get them to play it twice. So that is to say, Mark draws them in with this stuff, with the design, and then the rules and the world building, everything has to be good enough to make someone play a second time. So we could say, well, what does it matter what a game looks like? Right? It's all about the system, and it's all about like what's in those words. And you know what? That might be true for some people, and it might even be true full stop in terms of like enjoyment of games. So that at the end of the day, a person, if you sit them down and lock their wrists onto a chair and force them to play a game, they're just going to like a game that they're going to enjoy themselves more with a game that works well than one that looks really good. Okay. However, I want you to compare this to Scarlet Heroes. And this is something, again, not everybody has the same amount of money. I know this was Kickstarted. I wrote my one game I ever published on Microsoft Word. Okay, so nowhere to talk with this, but this book, when I was a kid, I used to have to go to church and bring home a bulletin to prove to my mom that I went to the service. And this looks like that bulletin. This looks like the back of a newspaper with like the obituaries and the help wanted ads. They used to be awesome. They used to have like this guy being like, "Hey, live alone, looking for live-in cook who doesn't mind, you know, also being married to me." To a new player, look at that. Oy vey. This is like, so this is way too dense. The art is not good enough to piece it out. It's black and white. And this is just the like, I'm not suggesting that this was a choice. It might have been a necessity. But I think if you repackage Scarlet Heroes in a way that, for instance, look at Outsiders, which we'll talk about. Look at this game. You're a solo player. You've never solo played before. Do you want to read the obituaries or do you want to read this game? Look at that. Look how easy. Look how inviting. Look how colorful. And I think there's something to be said about that in terms of this stuff does pull you in. It makes you fascinated. It makes you curious. And it when you get to the very dense parts of learning a game, especially when you're not used to doing that, it is the pictures and the organization and the beauty of it that is going to get you over those more difficult humps, because you say, I want in on this world. And I think that's the one area that Scarlet Heroes, and to be honest, a lot of Kevin Crawford's games could do a little better with. But you know, like I said, there's so many disciplines you have to be good at to put out a game. If you're one person, you got to draw, you got to be able to do math with probabilities, you got to be able to write, you got to, you know, I mean, it's tough. Design in terms of like layout and stuff like that. Anyways, all right. Next up, For Against Darkness. I think I'm going to piss a lot of people off with this one. Let's put it on deck here. Okay. As I have gotten more experience in solo playing, and I learn more about what I like and what I don't like, I have changed my mind on a classic conception that there are two schools of solo playing. The traditional answer is that there is two schools. One of them is journaling solo game, solo journaling, and the other one is like a solo RPG or dice rolling game. I believe there's a third category, and For Against Darkness is in that category. And what I would call that category is boardless board games. They are games that function almost exactly like a board game, except you don't need to buy any pieces or anything. You might, some dice, some paper, maybe some standees if you'd like. But For Against Darkness has no role playing in the way that I enjoy role playing. Okay. Full stop there. It does have role playing. You play a role, right? You play the role of a different type of adventurer. That adventurer has different stats. They have different abilities. But for me, I actually enjoy being able to not only have those good mechanics, I also want to inhabit my character in some way. Not too much. Again, it's that sweet spot. Journaling games, which we won't talk about, I feel that journaling games go too far into that, where the only ask of me is to just like think up this character and do like most of the heavy lifting for creating them. I don't want to do that. I want there to be some sort of transubstantiation that happens through dice and different dynamics. But For Against Darkness, you don't meet any new people when you play through it a second time. You don't encounter any surprising places. The plot doesn't take a left turn. You don't have any enemies that suddenly join you on your quest. Yes, if you play through it multiple times, you'll have multiple different results with dice rolls. But what I'm saying is, if you read through this book from start to finish, you know everything that can possibly happen. You know every weapon you can get, every armor, every enemy, etc., etc. And so for me, that's not very interesting because there are ways that I can do that a lot more easily. I can do that a lot more easily by playing a video game, by playing a board game, by playing a computer game, whatever that is, because if I'm going to invest myself into solo play, which does take this like additional investment that those other easier, more palatable, chewy sort of cookies are than just sitting down and playing a game, I need there to be some payoff in creating an expansiveness. There needs to be some sort of thing that expands beyond the bounds of that book, where I get to mix my creation with what's in this book to create something new. Four Against Darkness does not do that. It is a role-playing game. Let's see. I'm gonna lose. All right, I'll say it. It is a role-playing game in as much as chess is a role-playing game of like feeling what it is to be royalty. See, I know all the 4AD players right there. You were like, oh yeah, I totally understand. And now you hate my guts. So I'm sorry, but it's what I feel. I don't feel like I'm an adventurer when I finish playing it. So I'm going to actually put it here. It was fine. I'm probably not going to play it again. Sorry, everyone. All right. Star Trek. What a weird one. What a weird one. Let me take a deep breath here. All right. I guess the best way to say this is to start with one of the greatest movies of all time called Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, starring Sylvester Stallone and his actual mother. And there's this scene where she makes him breakfast before he goes to work. He's a cop. And she makes him eggs, bacon, hash browns, bagels, English muffins, toast, sausage links, Cocoa Puffs, like this huge breakfast. And the camera pans back to his face and he's like, oh. And I remember as a kid, I saw that movie, which changed my life. It changed all of our lives, we could be honest. And I was like, why is he so mad? Look at this amazing breakfast, right? It's kind of like in Christmas Story, right? Or in Hook, right? When they have the imaginary meal, like there's so many options. And then as an adult, you're like, yeah, I don't want to wake up and eat 17 different items, right? And Star Trek's Captain's Log is a Stop or My Mom Will Shoot style breakfast. It's death by features. There's too much. Okay. It was, I think, the first game I played on this channel. It was not my first solo game. And I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm not like I don't go to conventions or dress up. I mean, so if you ever seen me, that was probably a dare. No, I like Star Trek. I watched probably almost all of The Next Generation. I watched half of Deep Space Nine when I was really depressed. When I first started having a real job, I would come home and eat Cheetos and watch that. I watched a little bit of Voyager. I watched that Picard. I actually bought a subscription, whatever streaming service it was, to watch the first season of Picard. Anyways, I watched enough of the original series to like get it. So I enjoy Star Trek. You know, I think it does what I don't think a show could really do anymore. It had a good combination of action and meaningful philosophical debate, and it had bottle episodes, but still managed to like create tension and stakes. And so I was like, you know, this might be fine. I'm not so interested in Star Trek nowadays. Like, I don't really enjoy it anymore. But I knew enough about the universe, and I was like, cool. All right, let's check this out. I'd played Star Trek Adventures, which is sort of the core system. And Star Trek Captain's Log, the first thing you'll notice, it's modifius, is that it is a great deal. In terms of, it's like a 200-something page hardcover book, maybe just below 200. And it costs around like $35 US, which is incredible. right? You'll have some of these books are way smaller, way less substantial, and they cost $50. And it definitely gives you a bang for your buck. I mean, you get so much content. It, I think, is not until about 118 pages in that you start talking about you start reading about like the how to play. This book has so many generators, like random generators. It has generators for different races, for different ship components, for different positions on the starship. It also has each of these generators. They have different generators for each show. So it's like they have a whole section on, okay, if you want to place your mission in the original series, you can read this section. And then if you want to do TNG, you do here, Deep Space Nine here, Voyager here, et cetera, Enterprise. They even had a whole section on if you wanted to create your solo campaign in the animated series. And it was so overwhelming. And then on top of that, the dice system was like sort of the classic Modifius D20, right? Where it's like you have two attributes, or an attribute and a skill, or an attribute and a discipline. I don't remember what it was, but you sort of take a D20 dice for those, one of each, and then at least one of your dice has to be like under the difficulty rating. So you're succeeding a lot of rolls. But even that, they like abridged. And the reason for that is they say, oh, we made the dice rolling system simpler than it is in Star Trek Adventures to sort of like make it better for solo play. But they never really justify why that is. And it would be a little bit too insider baseball to explain it right now for the scope of this video. But like they changed, for example, there are like advantages or complications that you can like accrue in Star Trek Adventures, where in this one, it just turns into a status, right? And the resolution of these things, it just, even in the simple mechanic of resolution, they're offering you these options. They're like a dude who really wants to be your friend. And it's so much so that you go to like hang out with him and he's like, hey, you want something to drink? Do you want to sit here? Do you want to go, you could actually just like take a shower here, or like kick me out and live here and I'll just live on the street. It even says in the dice roll system, if you roll at least one die over, you've succeeded. If both your die, if you roll one die under, you've succeeded. If you roll both dice over, you've failed. But if you feel that your failure would really derail the game, you can go ahead and do what's called a success with consequences. And gives a whole system of that. And then also, if you roll a nat 20, you get a complication where something in the scene has to change and really go against you. But if you don't want to have a complication right now, you can also have a threat where it like is something in the future that happens. One of the things that Alfred Valley told me, thank you, Alfred Valley, who I consider one of the best indie game designers there is. I was fortunate to get some feedback on something I was creating from Alfred, who was more generous than he needed to be. And I remember one of the things they said to me was, you're giving too many options. Like, that feels like the right thing to do. And I'm paraphrasing here. That feels like the right thing to do, but it makes it more difficult for the solo player. Give them structure, tell them what their choices are, and then they can improvise around that rather than improvising for them. In this game, it's just way too much, right? Its system of like milestones and stuff like that, and campaign, how that goes, and like, you have to do this many milestones. Very familiar system. Feels very similar to Starforged. But interestingly, it's sort of the opposite dilemma, right? Whereas with Starforged, it was, like not enough lore. This game had way too much. And generally, when you're playing within an IP, it's already, you're very much claustrophobic when you're playing within an existing IP because you're afraid you're in the China shop again, right? You don't want to break anything. So you're tiptoeing around everything, oh, I can't do that because that doesn't make sense. And you can't do the bull in the China shop thing. And so this is already the problem with it. And then to add so much of this stuff on and make it so complex, if you're a new player, unless you really love Star Wars or you have played Star Trek Adventures, if you're new to solo playing, this game, I think, would be very overwhelming. And I think it had a lot of possibility if they could have aligned it, if they could have streamlined it and aligned it more with Star Trek Adventures and just kind of not tried to redesign the wheel on that. Because one of the most interesting parts of this game is how much it makes you evaluate your values, which that is part of Star Trek. It's like, what is my value? What is the prime directive? Side note, there is even a part, I'm just remembering this now, when you do the original series, they say, well, in the original series, they didn't have a prime directive. And then they have a box like, what to do if you want to use the prime directive, but you're playing the original series. And it's like, please, enough. Just chill, right? It has all this stuff on values and like, how much do your choices align with your values, et cetera. I think that's really interesting. There's really something there, especially with Star Trek. But unfortunately, the execution of it, it was all over the place. And you can tell when that happens because in books that are really overloaded, they have a lot of future reference. So it'll be like page 35 and they'll say, okay, you're going to use this system, which you'll learn about on page 63. And then that'll feed into your campaign tracker, which we'll review in chapter 9. And that's all over the place in that book. So unfortunately, I would be excited to see a new edition of it, but I'm going to say it's fine. I probably won't play it again. Okay. Notorious. So Notorious, I showed you the sequel to that, which is Outsiders, and it's by Jason Price. Every single review of this game, and as well as the game itself, uses the word hard scrabble, a hard scrabble bounty hunting at the edge of the galaxy. It's really weird. I mean, there is a gaping maw, an ennui you can get if you read some of the reviews for these games, because almost every review for this game like has the same search engine optimization. Every single one is like hard scrabble, Mandalorian-like bounty hunter game. This is, I don't even know what to say the Mandalorian is anymore. I thought that was a good one, but who knows? This is a beautiful, well laid out, very vibrant, very easy to read, nicely designed game. And it is, I believe, a wonderful, wonderful introduction to solo play. If you're new to solo play, it has an awesome game loop, really easy to follow. It's, I think, a great intro. It feels very approachable, right? It feels like if I'm new to solo play, and especially if I'm new to RPGs, I look at this, I say, I could do this. Like, I get this. I can follow along with this. There's not a bunch of weird terms or anything here, but it's still complex enough that you feel like you're getting in there, you're throwing dice, you're deriving stats, doing all the good stuff that you want to do. And I guess it also goes a little bit further into building out the world a little bit and building out relationships a little bit. And it even has an interesting system for like, there's a table, and I guess maybe that's a worthwhile thing to show. So it has, Outsiders has this as well. It's pretty much the same systems. But it has this table for like reactions. So if you, let's see if I can get this. If you're like local and you can speak to them and you can recruit them, but you cannot threaten or attack them. And if someone is your target, then you can speak to them and attack them, but you can't threaten or recruit them, etc. And so again, I think like in terms of intro to solo play, this is really great. It's showing you how a game loop works. It's just a well-made game. It has a definitive idea about what it is. It's definitely different. And again, I mean, some of the art is really fetching, as one might say. Has a lot of different archetypes here, which I know a lot of people are drawn to initially to games, especially younger kids who want to play these games. I think this would be a kid who's 12 or 13. I think this would be really good. It has progression. It could be linked together with the other with Notorious, and it's called trilogy mode, so I presume there'll be a third one. What happens after a while, though, especially if you're more experienced, is that structure that makes the game loop so tight and makes it so coherent and stuff. After a while, that begins to feel a bit confining. It's too rigid. You start feeling like you are on like It's a Small World at Disney Worlds. Like you have a lot of different things to see, these animatronic things, and you feel like you drive in, but you're kind of being pulled along. And not to the degree of For Against Darkness, but still, in a way, it can start to feel like I'm running out of things that might surprise me in this game. Nevertheless, I think it's a really good one. I'm going to say I liked it, and I need to give it another spin. I will probably be getting the third one in the trilogy when that comes out. Okay, let me do with Colossal here. I'm going to do a brief aside on two games here. So I put 1,000-Year-Old Vampire and Skeletons by Jason Morningstar in here. 1,000-Year-Old Vampire because this is a very popular solo game. It gets brought up a lot in terms of when people are looking for what should I play. It is very recommended. It is very talked about. And it is, I think, in what Starforged is sort of that a generative solo experience. I think 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is to journaling solo experience. I am not going to. Well, I will rank them, but I want there to be a more expansive discussion about them. And I almost made this video instead, the one about this that I want to. It's a very careful thought about journaling games that I want to have. Skeletons was the first journaling game that I ever did. It was the first game I ever bought, first solo game I ever bought. It was the first solo game I ever returned. I didn't get it. Reading about it now, I wonder maybe if I had some better direction on it, or if people would have, or if I would have had more experience. I don't know, but I am not saying these are not role-playing games, but they are different enough that it's like comparing Koyaanisqatsi to that 70s show or something like that. And if you like, it's so different that I feel it is not really fair. Not even fair. It's just not like up to me to rank these because I'm not interested in them. I'm not very interested in playing them anymore. But I'll talk about that more. But let me just say, for both of these, I'm going to say no thanks. I'm not interested in playing journaling games, especially journaling games that are very strictly journaling, that have very low dice mechanics. And either the next video or the one after that, because I have to do a little cyborg playthrough, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But please, this is one of the reasons why I didn't put like D here. I put like no thanks, is because truly it's like, it's not for me. All right. So I'm not trying to objectively say these games suck. I'm just saying I'm not interested. The reason why I dragged those forward was to talk about two other games that do a little something different with journaling. And the first one I'll talk about is Colossal. Okay. Another game, very, very popular, big game that people are going to be offered as their introductory solo RPG game. And it does something admirable. I think it does something ambitious in a weird way, in that it elevates a journaling game into, maybe elevate's not the right word, but the thing that I don't really love about journaling games is the lack of that that sort of alchemy that can happen while playing. And I'll focus in on that in the next video, what I mean by that. But Colossal is a journaling game that has a sufficient enough level of mechanics to make it into something that feels a little bit like a, more of an adventuring game where you're getting items and you're getting power-ups and you have different stats and stuff like that. And yet it's very, very light on those. Okay. Too light, really. But it is a journaling game that feels like a type of more of like an RPG. It's big on style. It has lots of accessories. It has its own website. The guy who does it is really good. Nick Angel, I think. Really good. Has a very definitive idea of what this game is supposed to be. Really, I think for a lot of people, it could be a good entrance point. And it does have that journal stuff where you'll kind of pull a card or whatever, and rather than saying, oh, this card has given you +2 poison or whatever, it'll say like, this card, you reach the top of the hill and over the horizon you see something you never expected. What is it? And I just don't prefer that. To me, that says, here, create a game for me, right? Like, I don't want to do that. That's because I'm not interested in doing that. That doesn't mean it's bad, but I don't derive any enjoyment out of like answering prompts that don't involve any sort of finesse or mental dexterity. They're just these sort of like prompts, and they're not even super thought-provoking prompts. It'd be one thing if these were real mind-bending prompts that got me to consider devastating moral consequences or think of something in a completely different way or something. They're just sort of prompts, what is it? What is the, what's up in the tree? What does this person say to you? Are they nice to you? Are they... And then also the mechanics of it, because it's got a little, it's trying to play both sides in terms of being a technical RPG and also a journaling RPG. And because of this, I think it has to, any time that there's like any like stakes created or sort of tension that might be created, it gives you this out. For instance, like encountering, I think it was called a rook, which is these big, constructs that walk around the Colossal. It says, these are really strong. And so you can fight them, but also if you're not ready, you could just not. And to me, again, I need structure. I need some level of structure. I know I can violate it. I can do whatever I want, right? I can draw, a wiener on every magazine page I see if I want to. I'm an adult. I can do what I want now. But it's like, I need there to be a structure, and part of me, in the same way in a movie, you suspend your disbelief. I like to play and suspend my, my, what would it call, omnipotence. I need to suspend the idea that at any time I can just take my player sheet and write in big red marker, you won the game, you're number one, you're the best player of this all time. I know I can do that. I don't want to do that. And the stakes get, like, it builds the stakes and then deflates them before it could become meaningful. And so for me, that's a big letdown. And that was one of the reasons I was never able to like fully play through Colossal, is because it just felt too trite and at times too twee. And too cute. The stats, it was like, is your stat 1, 2, or 3? And it just didn't feel like a game. It felt like something that was dressed up as a game. So that said, and I did only play this once. I was trying and planning on playing a video of it, so I always play a game before I make a video of it. But I can say it was fine, but I'm not going to play Colossal again. It might be your cup of tea. The other hand, we have Thousand Empty Light by Alfred Valley, which is a solo module for Mothership. And I think that to this day, there's truly nothing like Thousand Empty Light. When I was a teenager and I found Lovecraft, I felt like I had this secret that I had found these books, and I was so excited because they were so scary. And I went to school and I told my friends, man, you gotta read these books. I got this guy, H.P. Lovecraft. His books are so scary. And my friends would say, like, what's scary about him? And I said, I don't know, man. And they're like, well, are there monsters? I'm like, oh yeah, big monsters, like unbelievable, like gods, like, cosmic gods. And they're like, okay, cool. What do they do? Do they hunt? No, you don't even see them. I'm like, oh, you don't see them till the end? I'm like, well, no, like the main character sees them and then they go crazy and then you don't, And I couldn't convey it. I mean, I was like 13, 14. I couldn't convey what it was that made it so... Reading Lovecraft made me feel so empty and full of dread, and really like was able to play with my adrenaline and my feelings of, my hair standing on end, and truly like reaching into the basement of myself and investigating some of the bones, buried in the dirt of my subconscious and stuff like that. And it was such a powerful experience. A Thousand Empty Light gave me like a whiff of that, and it was so wonderful. It's kind of like if you were friends with somebody, or maybe like somebody, a girlfriend or your parent or whatever, wore like a cologne or a shampoo or a perfume that was very distinctive, and you probably would have a hard time describing it. Maybe you don't see that person anymore, and then one day you're walking down the street and you smell that smell, and it just is like blooms, this memory blooms in your head. That's what Thousand Empty Light felt like. There was something wrong while playing it. There's something wrong. There's something eerie there. There's something that scares you. And that something is ineffable. And it says there are places in this universe, probably on this planet right now, that things are happening there, but no one is there. But those things are still happening. And the lights are off and it's dark, and there are things moving there and breathing there, and no one has ever seen them and no one knows what they are. And that feeling was communicated so well by everything about this. And it was accomplished in such this tiny little pamphlet. It's like a zine. I love this game. I truly do. And I can't say that, it fits many of my criteria for what I want to see in a solo game, because it is really an experience all of itself. You can really only play it for the first time once. It's like seeing Fight Club or something. You can't get that thrill again. And I so wish I could, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to say Thousand Empty Light is in my Hall of Fame. I think it's just a great, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Okay. Dead Belt. Dead Belt is a game that flies under the radar, and it's kind of interesting. Again, this is a game that tries to do something different, and I really appreciate that, because you just see so many carbon copies of things. It has a really cool system of ship exploration. Now, let me try and see if I got it here. Oh, it's right in front of me. So it has, and there's an SRD for this. I forget what it's called, but this is from Couple of Drake's zine. And it uses cards, and the way it does ship exploration is through like these different setups for different deck plans, and the different cards represent, say you're on a ship, and one of them might be an alien, and one of them might be like salvage, and one of them might be an event, right? Yeah, alien rival scavengers, AI. And it's really cool the way that it works out and gradually reveals itself. And it's a really fun like resource management game in terms of oxygen, and you got to repay a debt. And I think the design is pretty cool. I it toes the line of like squishy type art a little too much, but I think it's got some of that classic serial comics sort of thing going for it, and I really like that. Once again, it does suffer, I think, well, for me, for the For Against Darkness problem of like, there's not, it is immersive to an extent in that you're able to imagine yourself working through this, but there's nothing really to, there's no synergies of things that are going to create something new. Like whatever is going to happen is in this book. And it is like a dungeon delve at its heart. There is not, I don't even know if there's any moment in it that asks you to like, tell us what's around you, tell us what this person's first impression of you is, etc. And so for that reason, I will say that it was fine. I probably won't play it again. I am curious on seeing what happens when, I didn't even have the damn thing up. I am curious about seeing what happens when you take the Dead Belt SRD, which I forget what it was called, but it's out there if people want to use that. They have like a licensing system for it. But I'm interested to see how this can be used in some more creative, more immersive, more role-playing ways in other setups. So something there. I probably won't play it again. Then again, maybe if I'll sometimes move into phases too, where I really like card games and stuff, like Iron Helm and stuff like that. And so maybe if I go into that phase, I might. But as far as an RPG, probably not. Runekarn Warden Saga, another game that is just has a small solo supplement at the end and really does a lot with it. This one is even more compact than Scarlet Heroes, and it has a little bit more than For Against Darkness in terms of random events, and not all of them are bound to mechanics or conditions or stuff. There is just some stuff that happens, and it's really on point with the Nordic, Norse sort of old gods flavor of it. And I thought it was really enjoyable. It flowed really well. The encounter system was really easy to use. It was not difficult to quickly generate an adventure in that. I think it'd be a great game for a one-shot. And so I would probably give it another spin, and I would try to dive deeper on it. And I hope they continue improving that formula, and I hope that there is more solo work done with that. Okay. Solitary Defilement, which I'd also include like Solitary Depths with this. I think that this is an outstanding solo supplement. And I didn't want to include too many solo supplements because I wanted to focus more on just like solo games that are games in and of themselves and don't require anything additional. But Solitary Defilement is, I think, a really great, it should be the trendsetter in how you adapt to solo a game. It's for Mork Borg, and it has one of its choices that it makes in it is to use the Starforge, Forged in the Dark sort of strong hit, weak hit thing. And it combines that with the Mork Borg system. So you are sort of like switching mind frames because you're playing Mork Borg, and then you're switching over to sort of use this strong hit, weak hit oracle to determine the outcomes of things. And I would say that it works fine, but in terms of form following function, it just doesn't quite feel right with Mork Borg. And I'm saying that right now in preparing for Cyborg. I'm using Solitary Defilement, which is basically it's by a different person, but it's sort of the same system of, strong hit, weak hit, etc. And what I notice is it just doesn't feel like Morkborg. Like there should be no weak hit. Morkborg is like a game where a boulder drops on your head and your adventure is done. The idea of like sort of having these like almost working but not quite. I don't, and this is the joy of being a critic right here. I don't really know what that would look like, but I just feel that for whatever reason, form does not follow function because Morkborg is a brutal game. And I just don't feel like, I feel like the system of the Forged in the Dark system, and I hope I'm saying that right because I hope that's the right one. It just feels too friendly and accommodating. And I don't know what would be better, but I am curious to see that. And I would say that's the only thing really that doesn't seem to line up perfectly there. If I were to say anything that it's missing, I think by combining it with Solitary Depths by Apocalypse, I always say that wrong, and they know that. You got the full package in terms of like all the generators that you need and everything like that. And it really makes Morkborg into something that can be, the book itself is as beautiful as it is extremely hostile to the reader. And it's nice to have these two supplements that are able to spell things out because as solo players, the adventurous aesthetic of Morkborg and Cyborg, sometimes that kind of thing can be a little bit stressful, I feel like, as a solo player, because I need the brass tacks. I need to be I'm running the whole show here, right? I'm playing the trumpet and there's like a monkey on my head with the cymbals and my foot is, playing the kick drum and I have a guitar. The accordion is going. I need to do all this. I just need the information. Can you tell me how to do this? And so I think that's a really nice supplement with that. And so I will say, despite what I said, I loved playing it, and I definitely will play that again, and hopefully we'll be playing a version of that in a few days. I'll also go right to Dragonbane because it's another one that's primarily not a solo game, but the supplement is well known by viewers of this channel as one of my favorites. And it's a very small supplement. It comes in the Dragonbane starter box. And it is just like maybe 10 to 12 pages. Again, I know just from comments and feedback from other people, I know that not everybody, a lot of people feel like very similar to Forbidden Lands, that it could have been built out more. But again, Sean Tompkinson was one who worked on that. And it just, in some ways, it makes me feel that there's something between the Dragonbane solo supplement, which is called Into Deepfall Breach or Down to Deepfall Breach. I'm forgetting right now, but there's something between that supplement and Starforged that is like the perfect solo game. One thing that is both limiting but also very good is the structure of the Dragonbane supplement is such that it gives you all these generators. It tells you how to resolve things, tells you how to do like moves and stuff like that. But then at the end, you go into Deepfall Breach and it has like different checkpoints, and it has different, it has a linear or at least like sort of structured path for the player to take. So if you're playing it for the first time, this is really the right way to go into a solo game. Is it's almost a tutorial to say you go along this path that is semi-structured. You're still creating rooms, you're still creating enemies, but it's semi-structured. And as you move along, you get a better and better feel of how this universe works, such that if you want to venture out of Deepfall Breach, it becomes easier after you play through that. At the same time, it's hard to not see a lot of potential there. And here's actually where I promise you, I didn't realize I was shilling this much, but that is what I am attempting to do with my Dragonbane solo supplement. That is very near on the horizon. Get hype. It's just kind of expanding that out and letting the person go out into the world like that. But nonetheless, it's one of my favorite solo supplements. The haters be damned. So I will say I love playing it, and I will play again. Okay. Another Free League solo supplement, Vazen Solo Thursday's Child. I mentioned this in a recent video, and this is a good supplement. It did not come out with the original Vazen, but it is from Free League. It's official. There's no physical copy of it, unfortunately. I really wish there was. But they do sell a PDF of it on drive-thru. Some of their choices with that kind of stuff is mysterious to me. Like, this would be something that solo players would gobble up in a second. Again, I mentioned this in a video recently where I was talking about mysteries and creating mystery games. And I think in terms of the options out there available for how to craft a mystery game that is not just like a scavenger hunt of clues, Vazen does a really good job of that. And it has an interesting system where you're gathering characteristics and you're looking at different events and you're trying to tie it to like which brand of mischief is what is, the poltergeist or whatever that is happening, which Vazen is that tied to, and it gives you a way to sort of zero in on it so that you're not having that wimpy mystery experience of like already knowing what the solution is going to be. And I would say though that, and this was really hard for me to express. I'll try my best. I don't think I'm gonna make sense here. Playing some games I feel are not supposed to be played solo. And I think that goes without saying, but some games like do not lend themselves to solo play as much. And what I can say from playing Vazen in a group is that there's a real charm that happens with the different wonky characters that show up. It's a weird sort of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type setup with this game. And when you're playing solo, it takes on a bit more of a dour tone. There's not as much emphasis on things like forming up your stronghold. Tracking down the Vazen feels less like a story. And after a while, I guess, it starts feeling like spooky Pokemon after a while. And so while I did enjoy the experience of it, and I might come back to it, especially with future supplements with Vazen, I think it's a well-made solo supplement that is just not necessarily the game that I would want a built-out solo supplement. Now, to talk about a game that I swear to God, I don't know why I'm shilling because I'm working on this too. The Mutant Year Zero role-playing is something that I would love to see a Free League-sponsored solo supplement for that would totally feel on brand, something that universe almost needs, that it feels like it's missing. But with Vazen, there's just nothing better than sitting around at the beginning of the mission. You have the one guy, he's a federal agent, and then there's an old arcane, one who studies the arcane arts, and an unassuming old woman who worked in the house, and you're all sort of, it feels like Clue, the movie, like it's just like that interplay is that special, dusty, funny, creepy, but sort of kitsch. I don't even know. It's a special feeling of playing Vazen. It's even down to the art. It like both. It's kind of like a scary Disney movie. Remember when Disney movies used to be scary? Like the Headless Horseman, I would have to turn away when the Headless Horseman was revealed, and Ichabod Crane, finally saw him and like screamed while jumping in the air. Vazen has that same thing where it kind of feels fun and light, and then when it gets a little scarier, it gets scary, and I really like that. And with the solo play, a lot of that gets eaten up by the procedure of it. So anyways, all this is to say, I liked it. Probably going to give it another spin. Okay. Let's talk Fallen. This is by Perplexing Ruins. This could be, I would love to talk about Fallen a lot more, but we're already in an hour and 15 minutes, and so I want to be sort of concise and stick to my script here a little more. Fallen is a great solo game. Perplexing Ruins knows what they're doing. And Fallen also takes place in a time period that like never gets, it doesn't get enough airtime in RPGs, period. And it is a full system that has, again, like Scarlet Heroes, incredibly efficient, has hit so many sweet spots. You remember that old like A1 commercial? It's like, I like A1 steak sauce because it hits me right here and right here. And he like points at the two parts in his cheek. I feel like that's Fallen, right? You got this weird interstitial time period of like where there's muskets and swords and maybe a little bit of the esoteric is still going on, but there's a sort of modernization, industrial revolution is creeping in around you and stuff like that. And you can tell it's like there's trash on the streets, there's rats in the holes, there's plagues heating up. There's, off with his head, on with his wig, whatever it might be is happening here. And I just do feel like Perplexing Ruins, once again, has just given us just enough to create something that feels like it is within in a specific universe, and you're able to tell a specific story because of the forces at work. The constraint of that time period creates this very interesting internal conflict, like historical conflict is coming to a head right there. And I feel like that kind of stuff can often serve as a very strong propulsion for a good story. Again, it is, I would say I would love to see a little bit more, maybe lore, a little bit more asides in it, but I don't really think that was the full purpose of it. I think it was to just create something that existed in that time and in that place. And in that respect, I think it's great. I'm going to say that I love playing it and I will play it again. And I recommend it. All right, getting towards the end here, and you can see we're kind of saving Alex T's stuff. We might as well just do all those together. The last one outside of Alex T ones I'll talk about is Broken Cask, and I guess Broken Cask Society. I've never played Broken Cask Society, which is the sequel. I do own it. I've read it. Broken Cask is fantastic. I just, I love... I wish there was, I can't even say, I was going to say, I wish there were more games like this, but the fact is that because there is not, it's what makes it so special, is that this is, an idea that it's not, revolutionary. Like, it's not like there's some sort of setup here that no one has ever thought about before. I mean, in fact, it's one of the things that is most fundamental to role playing, especially historically, is the idea of the inn, this place of convergence, this afterthought. But at the same time, it's when people are talking about their favorite memories or the feeling that they can conjure when they're talking tabletop, it's of like being in that inn, that place where all the possibilities going to stem from, where everything starts, where there's the possibility of everything that's going to happen out in the world can also happen there, right? There might be someone offering you a deal, or a mission, or a job that you can't refuse that's worth a lot of money but compromises your morals. Maybe there's some romance there. Maybe there's a conflict. Maybe there's new friends. Friends become enemies. Enemies become friends. And I also like that there's the choice to not fully lean into the resource management part of it, because again, I think there's a way to make that very tedious. And if you were to, be counting the till at the end of the night, you start getting into this thing that can happen with resource management games, at least for me, where I start to say, man, I did this all day at work and now I'm like doing this in the evening, like balancing a budget. I don't feel like doing this again. That said, one of the only things that I will say is that I wish there was like a teensy bit more mechanics in certain areas. Again, one of the charms of it and what keeps it chugging along and what keeps it a very comfortable, cozy game, and I actually hate that word to describe a game, but this is one of the few games that is truly a cozy game. It's a beer and pretzels game, or non-alcoholic beer, or apple juice and pretzels, of just having that feeling, summoning that feeling of that tavern, and being able to make a lot of choices about what you serve and what you're known for and what your reputation is, and enough of that stuff to make you feel like you're working towards something, but not so much that you're buried in it. And it has a really easy way of resolving things where it'll just give like the letter of the stat and then a number, and that's your target. You roll it. It works. If not, you lose morale, whatever it might be, staff. And I think that works big time, but there are just a few things in that game that I wish were built out more. For instance, you can hire sellswords or adventurers, or you can have ones that you cultivate yourself and that can raise your reputation. And then they'll go out questing, and to resolve whether or not the quest was successful, you'll just like roll one die. And it's that do I need combat mechanics for that? No, I don't want that. I'm running a damn inn here. I don't have time to go through combat. But I would love just a little bit more crunch on that. Just like a little bit more, 10%, 15% more, that would provide the variation of mechanics that prevents the game from its one thing that I think, because I've played it, actually once played it for several hours by myself. The thing that eventually made me go, I've kind of had enough, was like, even though RPG games are largely determined by dice rolls, if a game has varying dice rolls or varying different things besides dice roll that figure things such as the narrative, such as any other sort of randomizing generator, you forget that it's random, right? Because but when you're just rolling the D6 over and over and over again, it starts to feel like you're flipping a coin, or that really this is just like a series of scenes. And it's the same sort of dispersal of enthusiasm that might happen when the first time, if anyone remembers those viewfinders, right, where you probably not unless you're my age, but there were these like binocular looking things, and you could put these circular discs in them, and they had all these pictures, and it had this light inside of it, or you had to hold it up to the sun, and you'd click it and you'd see all these pictures, these tiny little pictures, right, of mountains or Disney World or whatever it is. And it was so fascinating because it was like, as a kid, it's like a kaleidoscope. And then all of a sudden you hit that first picture again, and then you click again and you're like, oh, I saw that one. And it just starts to feel like you're on that carousel of like, okay, I've seen these pictures enough times. Now, caveat, I have not, again, played Broken Cask Society. It went in a different direction than I would have expected the sequel to go. Could be interesting. Could not be. And it's very, it's very weird. I do not drink. I'm sober. And so even despite that, I thought that that didn't get in the way at all, because it was really about that atmosphere. So anyways, I'm going to say that I love playing it and I will play again. Okay. So I did actually not intend this necessarily. I was just dragging and dropping all of these. But since they're all here, let me give my Alex T overture here. All right. Alex T has a formula, and this formula is pretty incredible because it is concrete enough that it allows him to produce games that are viable and good and entertaining at a rate that far exceeds most people. I think Alex and the other Alan Barr as well. I don't want to forget to mention both, but they all have like a very similar core. It's usually a D100 system. They'll have some like differentiating thing. For instance, I'm going to say this wrong, but Caernathalis or Caernathalis and Broken Shores both have this idea of like, in Broken Shores, it's like you escape from a cult. In Caernethalis, it's like you've been accused or misaccused of this crime. And this sort of sets an adventure in motion. And in the same way, Across a Thousand Dead Worlds, which I would see right now as the magnum opus, but I mean, it's just like, makes like 3 books a year, so you could have 4 magnum opus a year. There's some inciting event. There is something that creates a very definitive loop, or in the case of Caernethalis and Broken Shores, a kind of in Caernethalis, it's more of a dungeon crawl. In Broken Shores, it's more exploration. And so I would say that it's hit the sweet spot in terms of preparation versus starting play. Like there's a good amount of complexity and difference and unique mechanics to every game. Caernethalis, for example, has a lot of combat customization and different things that can happen while you're defending, and it disregards like range. And instead you can like hit different parts of the body and you're making choices, and it's these opposed roles. Broken Shores has like these exploration options and implications from this cult, and there's this feeling of being pursued. Oddly, Broken Shores in some ways almost felt like an evolution of Caernethalis, even though Broken Shores was made before it, because the one thing, and I actually couldn't, I was surprised when I was preparing this that I realized this, that Caernethalis is sort of does not really have many opportunities for role play. It is much more of a dungeon delve. It is generating these different encounters. Now there is so much rich like secrets to be found in this book. I mean, you can find whole tomes, and Alex has like paragraphs of what each tome says, its philosophy and its history and everything like that. And so it feels very immersive, but it does not have that role play. And maybe that's by design. Maybe it is supposed to be a dungeon crawl purely. And the immersion comes from the richness and textured details of it, and more for people who like those kind of things. And again, there's a certain point at which something becomes is complex enough that it almost becomes novel, right? Like, yes, there is a finite amount of things that can happen here, but there's so many things. Like, there are like 12 different character classes in the game. That said, because it's like, I'm crawling through a dark tunnel under a city, the only NPCs, even though there are NPCs, they're usually enemies, is like a shopkeeper. This is really not going to be a game for me, but I think it is well made with lots of options. I did play it the last 2 days, and I will say it was fine, and that's good. Like, I'm good on that for me for now. Whereas Broken Shores, I feel like there's a lot of possibilities with that. I feel like there is lots of different places I can go with that, lots of different stories that I can create. I really love this idea of outrunning this cult. I realize that this is an ingredient for solo games that works so well, and yet I never remember it when I'm trying to create my own or when I'm evaluating other games. Is like something behind you, either abstractly or concretely, that is causing urgency. It's causing you to go forward. It's causing you to make decisions rather like on a timeline, because there's something that is converging on you. That creates so much pathos and stakes, and ultimately is going to be that wave that carries you forward and makes you keep playing to see what's going to happen there. So I thought Broken Shores was excellent. I will say I loved playing that. Now, boy, oh boy, Across a Thousand Dead Worlds, I'll just say it here, I'm going to put it loved playing and will play again. I really want to put it here. But I think it does what Starforged it goes that extra step of Starforge to say, like, there is more of a story here. There's more about this corporation and finding this meteor and having these futuristic machines inside of it. There's something that feels a little bit sterile about it. And part of that is by design. The ships, for example, are just these sort of very interesting, bare, geometric, empty ships that nobody can tell, like, why they go to the places they go for reconnaissance. The surfaces of the planets feel barren when I played through it. And one of the reasons I didn't, I did a 4-part series talking about it. I mean, it's a fantastic game, and I did a playthrough on my own. It just is missing like some single ingredient, and unfortunately I can't say what it is. And in that way, I feel kind of shitty about that, because I really think it's an awesome game, but there's something that keeps it at like an A- for me. In the same way that Starforge has an A- is there's something non-specific about the game. Like, I want there to be something more central and maybe moving or emotionally compelling, or truly not just curious or intriguing, but mysterious, a vacancy that must be filled. And for a book that has so much in terms of mechanics, which I do think once I put them all together, I think they work really well, but it is a lot. It's a lot to be balancing at one time. I needed something pulling me forward. I needed some sort of carrot dangling me forward, because I think it would be a tough investment for most solo players, regardless of their experience, to spend the time needed to put all that together and ultimately have the story of just like, I'm exploring this planet, then I'm exploring this planet, then I'm exploring this planet, paying off debt or collecting things. I think for some people that is reason in and of itself. For me, I need to be working towards some greater truth or understanding. And maybe that's like an unfair standard, because I just hold Alex T in such high regard as a creator. And so I'm definitely not saying anything is wrong with it, because it's one of the most outstanding things I've ever read in this genre. But yeah, I guess if I were to be honest, that would be the thing. Now, I want to talk about this last one that I think gets talked about the least, which is Under Ashen Skies. And of all of Alex T's games that I have played, this is the one that is, to me, most unique. This almost shows me this. This is, I think, the seed of the true great work. This book is fascinating, and I played it last week. First of all, this RPG goes for things that games just don't go for anymore. It goes for topics that they're very serious, man. Like, very, very serious. I mean, and that's part of it, is like, you go into this trauma and you'll see that in some games, but this game spells it out. And then dark secrets. Every character has a secret, and then every character has a really dark secret. And some of those really dark secrets that you're rolling on, you're like, holy shit. Like, it is serious stuff. It's also set, like, it has a location and specific locations, and it has also dramatis personae, like certain people that are fixed NPCs, other ones that you generate. And it's almost, to me, felt like a horror version of Garden State. And I think that is not what a lot of people want to hear about their work. So let me refine that a little bit. It's like coming to this town and something happened, and it's there's something happened there that is not happening there anymore, but something also happened there that changed everything. and you can't quite put your finger on it. And it has all the pieces, right? It has combat, it has equipment, it has NPCs, it has stats, it has all this stuff, but it also has these like this investigation component that I didn't get far enough on to really see like how satisfying it would be, but it's very interesting. It is a concept that I hope gets fleshed out even more, because I find it to be some of the most powerful, unique solo game writing that I have come across. If you haven't taken a look at Under Ashen Skies, I think you should give it a chance. I think that it's very well laid out. There are lots and lots of tables that have lots of words in them, but they're all sort of like relatively familiar things, right? So, you look at a table and you roll a 6 on a table and it says like, you've unearthed a fire kraken named Dar Ahula, and this causes, -2 fire resistance for everybody. It's like very complex sort of things that can come in fantasy and sci-fi. All of these things on these tables are very familiar, but they're very, very meaningful. And I think this game, I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to say that I think that this game, more than any other Alex T's games, really demonstrates his capabilities as a writer, because it's just very well written. Like it's just very well written. And so that's my little dream, that we get Under Ashen Skies 2, The Revenge. Oh, here it is. I bent my cover. I've never been more sad about bending a cover. God, I'm so mad about that. Anyways. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tier list. As I stated before, this tier list is the objective truth. If anyone disagrees with me, they are wrong. And not only is their opinion wrong, there's something wrong with them. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you'd like to become a member, click join. Those emojis are hot. Okay. And also, please consider signing up for the pod. It really is a lot of fun. And I think, it's only going to get better as time goes on. So that's all I've got. I'm tired. I need to eat an open-faced jelly sandwich. Then I'm going to go to sleep. Maybe I'll eat the jelly sandwich in bed. Actually, I shouldn't do that, because every time I eat in bed, whenever there's crumbs on my bed, it's like directly proportional to like my level of depression. So I can't do that. But grape jelly,